Our first panel topic today, and Angela will personally moderate, is how you can make New York the next AI ecosystem.
So Julie is the president and CEO of Tech NYC, an organization representing New York's fast-growing entrepreneurial tech industry, which she founded in 2016. She's also a venture partner at Hanger. Jesse Middleton is a general partner at Flybridge Capital. Flybridge is an early-stage venture capital fund with over 20 years of investing experience, with over $1 billion under management. Over the past decade, Jesse has invested in over 50 companies, both as an angel and venture capitalist, and Cecilia is the Chief Strategy Officer at NYCEDC. The NYCEDC is a nonprofit whose mission is to encourage economic growth in each of the 5 boroughs of New York City. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's jump right in. I'm born and raised in New York City, and I would love to see New York City compete against SF, and I know that we have the resources, the talent, the businesses, the companies here. So I wanted to ask each of you, what is special about New York City, and why should AI startups build companies here?
Thanks so much. I'm really excited about being here. It's such like an energetic, exciting room, especially for 9 a.m., which I think speaks to why New York is so amazing.
By a show of hands, is this early for anyone?
Yeah.
Or is this normal? A little early. Okay, good.
Oh,
good,
there's
good.
a lot of people who say normal. I'm impressed.
I'm impressed.
I'm impressed. Actually, how many people are New Yorkers? And how many did people come in? Yeah. Yeah, just curious. Okay, so listen, first of all, I would take a little bit of umbrage with how you framed it, because I think New York is obviously competing, and New York is like totally vibrant right now. And I mean, I could answer this in a million different ways and actually talk for the full 30 minutes, which I won't. But I think that, and I don't love how we often frame it as a competition, because SF is doing its SF thing, and that's good too. You know, SF has a culture, I think, of like really burrowing down, getting like super deep in the tech. I used to live there, putting like your blinders on and just like being with everyone just like you, building. That's important. New York is not that. New York is this like amazing, totally just like bouncing around, robust, diverse, like insane city. And I think that is incredibly important for building robust businesses. I think that this is true for AI, but it's true for all different kinds of tech companies. You know, what we see here is that founders and the founding teams have more friends who work in different industries, have more conversations, are able to hire people who understand different, like slightly different lanes. You know, if you're building an AI company that's going to power fashion, for instance, you're going to be able to find the expertise on the fashion side, on the marketing side, on the sales side, way better, way easier here. And I think that's part of the special magic of New York. The other quick thing I'll say about the special magic of New York, and then I'm sure I'll say many other things later. I love New York. I mean, I would never want to do this anywhere else, is that people in tech, more broadly, but in AI specifically, build in New York because they want to be in New York. People go to SF oftentimes, or some other, mostly the Valley, because they feel like inertia is pulling them there, and they might feel like they don't have a choice. Everyone I work with here in tech at some point said, I want to be in New York for some reason, and they made a very conscious choice, and a lot of times those choices aren't just because of their business. Maybe their family's here, maybe their friends, maybe they just love it. And that builds a really amazing community of people who are dedicated to being here. And so that's the kind of tech ecosystem, that's the kind of AI ecosystem I want to be part of. Anyway, that's why I feel so great about New York.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because I think it's important to contextualize everything that Julie shared. We're the largest economy in the country by far, and we have a record number of private jobs. We're like at 4.7 million jobs right now, so completely covered all the jobs we lost during the pandemic and added a lot of them. And tech was a huge part of that recovery. So the ecosystem here has been part of the continuous history of the city. And then entrepreneurship is the lifeblood of New York City. And it has really, really dramatically grown over the last few years. About 1 in 8 businesses that you see in New York City today opened in the last 12 months, which is completely remarkable. So this is also, these are also like very important colliding factors as to why AI is happening here and why tech is growing. That really speaks to something that you can't find anywhere else in the nation. It's just like the strength and the scale of what we have to offer.
Yeah, and I would just say I echo Julie your comment. It's already here. People are already building tech here. They're building AI. When I moved here 15, 16 years ago, I consider myself a New Yorker now, raising 2 children in the city. But when I moved here, the New York Tech Meetup was in the hundreds. Now, multiple times a week, there are multiple 1,000-person events on the same evening. And I was fortunate to have been, my partners and I were fortunate to have been a part of 2 major venture-backed companies in New York, both Mongo and WeWork. And during the rise of WeWork, what floated that company up, what filled our hallways and our offices, for the most part, was tech. So we had 50,000 people working in our buildings here. So tech has been here, and AI is an offshoot of that. I think one of the more important things that we've started to notice is that not only do people choose to move here, they choose to build here as opposed to going where the inertia is pulling them. But it's not just the founders, it's the other talent. My partner Jeff teaches at Harvard Business School. Huge, 80% of his students that wind up graduating want to come to New York. These are all brilliant people, got into Harvard, like it or not, and come here to New York and want to work and build here. And so the talent's here, the success is here, and people choose to be here and build. And so it pulls others in the same direction. Sorry, it's early.
I guess I want to have a little bit of a contrarian point of view because I kind of represent founders that are on the ground building. But I think some of the challenges that have been brought up to me are that first, kind of hiring AI talent in New York City is a little bit expensive, especially for startups. Getting AI talent in general is kind of crazy because you have to compete against companies like NVIDIA and stuff like that. And then also, some of the schools in New York are kind of more known for business, so investment banking, finance, stuff like that. From your guys' point of view, how can we create a more robust talent pool? And even though we have great talent, but bringing them into AI startups, I'm just saying because I know a lot of founders that are still think they are New York, and I believe in New York, but these things are kind of getting brought up to me, and I want to kind of bring some of these issues to you guys.
First off, you're competing with NVIDIA's hiring. I want to talk to you. There's we have a couple friends that work there, but no, look, it's not cheap to live in New York City. Call a spade a spade. It's not. It's a choice, is what I tell people. And they say, how is it raising children here? I'm like, it's a choice. But you're getting some of the benefits that we talked about. So I think one of the things that I would say to founders when they're trying to attract great talent is that a huge part of the earliest stage is storytelling and sort of building a vision and getting people to follow you sort of irrationally early. And so I have plenty of friends. When I joined Adam and Miguel at WeWork, my best friend and I split a salary because we didn't have any money at WeWork. So if somebody was getting paid, I think it was 120 grand. We were making $60,000 living in Manhattan. It's not easy to do that, but it's possible. And you shouldn't do that for a long time if you can avoid it. But my only point is, I think that was all in the promise that there was something bigger and magical that we were creating. And I think ultimately, the smartest people, the most creative people, they're seeking leaders like that. And so part of it is creating the right story, creating the right vision, and pulling people along early. You will have to pay them eventually. So I just want to be clear. Don't be cheap forever.
One of the things, too, I think that has shifted over the past, I'd say, decade, obviously, is it's not like the Bay is cheap. Yeah. There was a time where it was significantly cheaper than New York, but now, I think that's kind of a wash. And by the way, I too raise many children in New York, and it's insane, but it's also insane for my friends on the West Coast too. That is also a choice to raise a kid in SF. I think the bigger choice is if you go to some of these other pockets in the U.S. And that, that might be for some. It's not for me, but it's for some, and that's fine. The other thing to answer your question, and Cecilia will have a lot on this too, but New York City and New York State are really doubling down, I think, on how we are building and fostering the next generation of tech talent. One project that I've been intimately involved in that is super amazing when we talk about AI in New York is Empire AI. And this is on the academic side of the house, so I'm not sure if you all have heard about it, but the state is putting in about $325 million. And we've got 6 academic partners: Columbia, Cornell, NYU, RPI, SUNY, and CUNY systems. And with some philanthropic dollars as well, we are in the early stages, but it's all happening, of building a $400 million supercomputer in Buffalo that those academic institutions will have access to. That, startups are not going to have access to that kind of compute, but it's going to be a significant amount of compute. We're working with NVIDIA. It's like all going to be amazing. And that is how we're going to build the kind of academic, the flywheel effect of attracting the academics. So they're going to get access to those CPUs. They will bring postdocs. We already have postdocs who are coming to New York because of that computer. And those people will stay here. Hopefully they'll advise companies, they'll build their own companies, and then we'll have more students come to study with them. And it's those types of and there's nothing else like this happening in the country, by the way. New York is like completely out front on this. And it's that kind of investment that we see from government and the private sector as well, because they're helping here, that will help really ignite furnace, we're gonna use all these words today, really kind of help drive the next pool of talent to New York, I think.
Yeah, I think what's really difficult with New York is because the economy is so large and the city is full of lots of different sectors and industries that sometimes newer industries don't see themselves, but it does not mean they're not there. So just staying on kind of like the academic investments, you already have a lot of institutions that are really doubling down on AI. Like the city invited Cornell Tech to come to New York City about a decade ago. They're really doubling down on AI. The Data Science Institute at Columbia, we were part of creating it, also the case. The Center for Responsible AI at NYU. There's a tremendous amount of academic innovation with some of the best global talent that is here researching this very question right at this moment. And I think the collision of these people with the number of industries that are here and that will need to apply AI in order to remain competitive. We're looking at things as diverse as biotech and AI, which we think is going to really completely change diagnostic and personalized medicine, but also everything, of course, from law, marketing, publishing, advertising, retail. Everything is happening in New York, and therefore all applied AI is going to happen in New York over the next decade. It's just inevitable, and the size of it is going to be dramatically larger than what can happen in San Francisco.
Can we spend one more second on that? I'm so sorry. And the application of AI, because I think this is what we saw 10, 15, 20 years ago too. A lot of early tech came out of the Valley, but we figured out how to monetize it in New York. And I think we're seeing the same with AI. Jesse, I'm kind of curious if you're seeing that too. I mean, what I'm seeing is that companies are coming here to figure out how they're going to make this stuff profitable, how they're going to figure out who's buying it, what it's for.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. So I feel like the startups that I know that are here, their customers are here. Right. So even though there might be like other components where they might have to go other places and bring them kind of to New York, I feel like that's what New York is great for. Like if you're going to create a financial AI company, you're going to do it in New York. For example. And so I feel like New York is like the home of industry, but I just wanted to bring up some of the things that I'm like hearing on the ground, because I do think these are things that every founder, not only in New York, but actually around the world, is like wondering, like, are they in the best place to create an AI startup?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'll just say is, in 10, 15 years, Datadog, MongoDB, you can look at Flatiron Health, you can look at, there are dozens and dozens of companies that have been built here that are difficult tech companies. So yes, the business models and the customers are found here. But my point earlier still stands, which is talent wants to live here, not just the business talent, not just the customers, but like ask any brilliant 22, 23, 25-year-old who's, by the way, not just building an AI, but building with AI. So this has become more ubiquitous. So I can code again, which I haven't done for a long time using ChatGPT or one of these, but don't hire me for that. But great talent is coming here. They're able to build. And so I think you do come for your customers, but I also think you come here because it's the place you want to build. It's the place you want to live. And you can build successful technology companies with engineering talent here. The educational side is definitely going to help. That may be 5 or 10 years out then as those people come through the program and graduate. But before that happens, I mean, I don't know, just quick show of hands. How many people here are engineers? Okay, there's a lot of people here that build software. So like, it was like half the room. So they're here in the city, living here, building here.
Just to your point, I totally agree with everything you said. And at Tech NYC, we're spending, over the since we started Tech NYC in 2015, 2016, we spent more and more of our time focusing on issues that aren't even tech specific, safety, public education, really making sure the subways are working well, really making sure that New York City continues to be a place where those people want to live. Because that is, we are finding when we talk to our founders and the people building in our network, like that is, almost as important as any tech issue. As long as people want to live, people have always wanted to live in New York. It is the story of New York. No one pretends it's cheap. And so we want to make sure that it's a place where you can stay, where you can raise your kids, even if it's challenging at times, even if it's a choice. I love that. I'm stealing that, by the way. It's what we saw in 2021 when companies left San Francisco is that the companies will go where the people they want to hire are. And as long as the people that companies want to hire want to live in New York, the companies, even if it is expensive and even if it's hard, they will be here too.
So I'd love to jump to the next question. Would love to do a quick poll in the audience. How many of you guys are AI founders here? Okay, awesome. Well, Jesse, every time I speak to other founders, they talk about fundraising, and I know that after Labor Day, kind of the fall fundraise kind of kicks off.
We all come back from vacation, they say?
So every time I speak to founders, they say that kind of capital is a little bit more difficult to come by in New York City than in SF. And maybe it's because of risk appetite, the metrics of what people look for kind of startups. Like people kind of think like, oh, I have a deep tech startup, like I need to fundraise in SF, or where I'm currently am with my metrics, like I might have to go to SF. Why is capital harder to come by in New York City? What is the case, and how can founders navigate this if they need funding to start their businesses?
I like thinking about the fact that it's easier to raise with shitty metrics in SF, and you need real metrics here. No, look, I think one of the biggest mistakes in having backed 60 plus companies in New York in the last 8-9 years now, having sat on these boards, having helped founders raise money, and also, by the way, worked with founders who couldn't raise money, who had to shut their companies down. I think one of the biggest mistakes is it sounds so simple, not doing your research. There are hundreds of funds here in New York. There are tens, probably now hundreds of billions of dollars of capital available. And at the earliest stages, I mean, there's not enough time in the day to meet as many founders as we want to meet, and there's not enough time to do the diligence, do as many deals we want to do, right? So like there's capital, there are founders, and there are funds here. I think the toughest thing is that, to what we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of industries in New York. So investors here are looking for a lot of different things. And one of the big mistakes I see is you go out and you pitch a half a dozen firms, but they're like not the right firms. Don't go pitch the seed funds if you have no product, because most of those funds would like you to have a product and early traction. But if you go on to NFX's Signal product and say pre-seed New York City, you will see thousands of people listed who have all said, I like investing in things without metrics. Like that's what pre-seed is. And so one is staged and the other is category. So yes, if you're building in fashion, use that same place, filter for fashion. I cannot tell you the number of founders that come and pitch me try to pitch me a direct-to-consumer, e-commerce brand, product, whatever. It's just not my area of focus. And so when you show up at my door, it's going to feel like there's no dollars available. You show up to somebody who doesn't invest in deep tech, and you show up building a developer platform, like they're going to look at you and say, that's not for me. Go out west. Those people know deep tech. I promise you, they're here. Do like 30 minutes of research. And you can email me. I'll point you to the website. But like signal.nfx.com, one of my favorite pages to go to. It's always open in my browser. It's not ours. It's made by NFX, a different venture fund. I'm very jealous. But it's got every fund on there by stage, by sector. Do that first.
That's amazing. We would actually love to take you up on potentially doing a session on that in the future.
Happy to.
Just because I think some of these misconceptions can happen about finding the right partner for funding. Julie, I know that you work with a lot of startups in New York City as well as like big tech, and you kind of represent this tech ecosystem here. Can you share more about what policies or initiatives like these startups or tech companies are pushing for in the New York City ecosystem? What policies would they like to see be done so that it can contribute to a more thriving like New York City tech ecosystem?
That's a great question. So I talked about Empire AI. That's something we've worked really, really hard on with the governor. I don't know if the startups necessarily came to us, but that's something, and I think this is kind of the value of Tech NYC too, is we kind of can see across the industry and we can take the longer view to say like, oh, you might not be worried about this next month, but if we can make this, it's making an investment. You know, the governor made an investment the same way, Jesse, you think about making investments. Well, different return.
He's still hoping for a return of some sort, I
That's
assume.
right. So I think there's that's the kind of like economic development bucket, which is so much of what you all do at the city too. There are a lot of, and I wonder if this is on the Signal.NFX site too, because there's so much money that both the city and the state can invest in startups. The city and the state both have funds, and I don't think a lot of founders know that, because I frankly think the city and the state both don't do a very good job at getting it out there. So there's a lot of opportunity for that. And the very cool thing about those funds, by the way, is that while they do worry about returns, it isn't sometimes they have slightly different metrics for how they invest. They might focus, for instance, on diversity or on jobs in New York. They have, so it opens the aperture. So I think we focus on policies like that help more opportunities, like more of that, more economic opportunity. We spend a lot of time on the kind of livability bucket, the stuff I talked about earlier, making sure people want to live in New York, increasingly more time spent on that. And something then we spend a ton of time on that we're in the weeds is, you know, there's data privacy bills bouncing around Albany. There is currently an AI bill sitting on the governor's desk that she has to decide whether to sign or veto by the end of the year. That bill applies specifically to how government would use AI tools, but is incredibly important. Government is also potentially a huge customer, a huge user of private sector tools. So we want there to be an environment where government can safely, I mean, you know, there should be some guardrails, but especially government has like a different set of obligations to its customers being citizens than average companies do. But we want our city and state to be able to take advantage of AI tools, so we focus on those issues. And then, I mean, you guys all know the politics around tech have changed dramatically over the time that Tech NYC has been in existence, so it's not as relevant to this audience, but just quickly, like, you know, all the stuff about delivery apps and ride, you know, we are in the weeds on all of that. It is I'm gonna be in business for a long time, I guess.
When can we have Waymo here? Self-driving, no,
I think that might take a little while, but you know, I think you can do it in the Navy Yard right now.
That's right. All right,
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I'll move.
Yeah.
So Cecilia, I would love to understand how NYCEDC is supporting AI startups today, and what are you guys like fighting for the city?
Yeah, so we're really trying to make investment across like a really broad swath of priorities for the next like 5 to 10 years is really like the horizon that we have. So we have a very successful program called Founder Fellowships, where we're taking startup entrepreneurs, tech-enabled startup entrepreneurs through accelerators and incubators to really get them VC ready. We've pipelined like more than 150 founders over the last year. It's been a very successful program. We really see how AI is changing the type of founders that we see within the program. So that's like a very direct investment into underrepresented founders in New York City. We're making big investment, as I was mentioning, into life science and AI. We have a $100 million request for proposal that's out there that just closed a couple of weeks ago to create a new center for AI and life science in Kips Bay, which is the life science center for the entire industry in New York City. So that's really important. We have an impact fund. Our first partner is Harlem Capital. So again, making direct investment into either startups that are in New York City, that are in the type of industries we're interested in, or underrepresented founders. So these are just a few examples. We're really now looking really closely at workforce and especially youth. So working with the DOE, working with CUNY to try to understand how we can pipeline more like native-born New Yorkers into AI. There's about 40,000 people in New York City today who have AI skills, but we really want to grow this pipeline and make sure that every young kid walking down the street of New York City today can have the opportunity to see themselves in this growing portion of the economy. So we're looking at everything and also listening a lot to what we're hearing from founders, investors, the ecosystem at large. A huge part of what we did for the last 10 years is making sure that tech feels that they have a home in New York City and that we can bring the ecosystem together. So the space we're in, for example, Civic Hall, that's the project that EDC led. We really wanted to have a beautiful space where the tech ecosystem and workforce and really important conversations like today happened in the center of where the tech industry is in New York City. So we'll continue to plot against all of these goals. We're seeing, and that's something we didn't discuss this morning, the influence of AI in climate tech. Climate tech is really growing in New York City, so everything green economy is advancing, and we think that AI has a really important role to play as it relates to energy management. So with the Navy Yard, Governor's Island, and EDC, we're allowing climate tech companies to pilot on our assets so they can actually demonstrate very clearly the benefits of their products. And we're partnering with universities also just to make sure that they can truly demonstrate the learnings that they have. So playing a role in kind of like their journey to both solve climate tech, but solve climate change, but also kind of build entrepreneurship in New York. So we're trying to be everywhere where there's something relevant happening, where we can play a role moving forward.
That's amazing. I would actually love to open it up to 1 to 2 questions from the audience. I know a lot of AI founders are here. They're kind of thinking about, do they keep building here? Do they move? Do they keep growing their startups here? I would love for them to kind of have an open dialogue with you guys. So I would love to pick 1 or 2 people to kind of share any kind of question.
Okay, I'll just say it out loud. I guess this is for you, Jesse. I'm interested within AI, what's not interesting to you guys, or what you see that you're not? Is it ChatGPT wrappers? Is it people trying to develop foundational models?
So the question was what we're not interested in at Flybridge in AI was, yeah, So and the 2 examples of ChatGPT wrappers, foundational models. I think, look, again, if you're competing with NVIDIA, building a company, the chipset level, that's not an area that we're focused a lot on. It's very expensive. A lot of capital has to go into it. I'm not saying we wouldn't do it, but it's like that. There's an extraordinarily high bar, so that's one. Foundational models are like, it's the game of like kings and queens now. It's you're not going to show up and raise $1 million seed round and compete with OpenAI anytime soon. So being really focused, small language models we think are a big area to focus on. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm actually not opposed to things like ChatGPT wrappers. I think one of the challenges is in this world of AI, and this is a little bit of a longer term take on this, but if you believe in sort of AGI in the future and you believe that AI is going to keep advancing at the speed it is, which it appears to be, most of the products that we're seeing out there, developer tools, data, whatever it is, won't have to exist. The AI is going to be able to do it itself. It's going to code in real time and solve the problem you're asking it. In which case, one of the things we're thinking about is the winners are going to be those who create these super unique interactions, interfaces, integrations with other products that are difficult to purely code. Like they require a commercial relationship. Probably not going to see AI negotiating a deal with Microsoft anytime soon. It's going to take people to do that deal. So I think we're not opposed to those. Broadly speaking, though, I don't want to speak just for Flybridge. I think I would just say everything is on the table right now. There is not a vertical, a product set. I said this at our annual meeting with our LPs last year that I was more bearish on Salesforce. I'm not saying that they're going to go away, but the idea of vertical enterprise software, every single $100 billion+ company is at risk right now of being disrupted by something new. So I don't know that there's much that we would look at and then say across the venture ecosystem, like, wouldn't believe there's a possibility there. It takes the right founder and the right sort of UX and integration and take on where the world's going to make it exciting.
I'll take one last question from the back over there. Yeah.
What do you think has changed for the startup ecosystem in New York City, and what prevented New York City to be the central hub for the startups?
Well, first of all, I think that New York is a central hub. I think there are, I think that, just to be fair,
There are two.
25,000 tech
Yeah.
startups in New York City right now.
I think I've seen numbers that are even higher. So, I mean, New York is a central hub. I think there's probably multiple hubs at this point, internationally speaking. And I think that, so that's great. And then what was the second part was, what was? Why was it not the case before? Well, I mean, I do think that, I've got a long spiel and I'm not going to give it now, but I do think that, we are technology is built in waves. There was a wave, the application, the original kind of application layer of the internet clearly came out of the West Coast. It happened at a time when regulators weren't paying attention, big business wasn't really paying attention, and they came up with these crazy names and built these crazy companies, and all of a sudden people in New York were like, oh shit, and I think, but those days are done. You cannot build a startup. The second you raise $1 million, like, people know about you, your competitors know about you, government knows about you, and so those days of like just hiding in a different time zone on a different coast with your head in the sand building, like those days are done. So I think that is what really opens up the aperture for New York.
And the one thing I'll say is we're in the movement now. So prior to the Bay Area and the Valley being the venture capital home, like it was Boston with life science, biotech, pharma, like that's where everybody was. My partnership was at Greylock. There were 6 partners in Boston. Like that was where Greylock was, one of the institutional, and then they moved to the West Coast. We've seen that move coming to New York now for the last 10 to 15 years at least, maybe a little longer, but certainly in the last 5 to 10. And so we're in that movement. This is not, the one thing I'll say is, and this is one of the questions I get asked by founders, like, do I have to go out? Should I build out West or build in the East Coast, whatever. Honestly, build where you're most comfortable. Like, build around the people that you engage with well, you're comfortable with. You can build a massive company in either place. There are 2 major hubs in this country. It's San Francisco or the Bay Area and New York. That's kind of it right now. But you can build in any city. But if you're going to choose a hub, build in the one you're more comfortable with. Know that people with a chip on their shoulder tend to outperform. They kick ass. So, like, if you're building in New York and everybody on the West Coast is saying to you, you're really going to build a massive tech company there, it's going to drive you to work a little harder, to go a little faster, push a little harder. And so our bet over the next 10 years, which we're investing in, is that New York will outperform in many of these categories if it hasn't already.
All right, guys, let's give it up for our panelists.